Electricity, the power that allows us to have our luxurious lifestyles. When processed, electricity is a necessary asset in both work and play, powering everything from home appliances to televisions. Without electricity, the human race wouldn't be nearly as advanced as it is today. But how electricity is made is just as important as what it does. Meet coal, the all-purpose fuel source, coming in all forms from soft rock to hard rock and even gases. In addition to energy use, coal is one of the fastest burning materials on Earth. Humans have been using coal since ancient times, but the discovery of its use for electricity happened in the mid-18th century in Britain. From there, coal's use skyrocketed, and by the mid-19th century, right when the industrial era was beginning in America, coal was being used in the largest power plants and factories to make mass production easier than it had ever been. Coal was easy to get, it was abundant in the U.S., and there were numerous uses for it. America took advantage of that fact. Throughout the Northern Hemisphere, there are numerous coal seams and deposits. According to the Energy Information Administration, there are about 168 years of coal left as of early 2011, if mining rates stay the same, that is. In addition to being the most popular energy source in the country, it comes in many forms. It can be turned into gas through a process known as, what else, gasification, where the coal is heated in water until the carbon water turns into steam. It can then be collected and shipped away in special canisters. But coal can't just be used for workers in those giant businesses. There has to be an amount used exclusively for residential energy, despite the fact that businesses eat up about 43% of the coal supply. A whopping 43%! Residential energy is paid for by homeowners so their electronic devices can run while they pay the bill each month. However, over time, as coal amounts are decreasing, residential bills are going up, and some homeowners are switching to more long-term effective energy sources, such as solar or wind power. Speaking of coal decreasing, it's getting increasingly more expensive to mine the coal. As deposits are mined, miners have to dig deeper, which requires more time with equipment and more time on the job to eke out those last bits of coal. Not to mention the carbon outputs we get when the coal is burned is tremendously harming to the environment. However, recently, President Barack Obama and other politics have been talking about making coal less damaging. While most shoot down the idea of so-called clean coal with embarrassing political comics, Arch Coal CEO Stephen Lear agrees that we can create clean coal in an indirect way. And it's not by making the coal itself cleaner, but making sure the carbon emissions are contained and stored in carbon captures. His proposition also suggests placing these carbon captures deep underwater, as salt water can store much more carbon than air. To see the full interview, click the annotation in the middle of the screen. Now we know that coal is abundant and we need it. But how do we get it? It used to be easy to get coal in the 17th century. Since it was just discovered, miners didn't have to dig far down to get it. The mining rates were slow, but Britain only really needed to use coal for small residents and businesses. When the Industrial Revolution translated to America, however, the conditions were different. By then, the steam engine had been improved and factories were starting to pop up everywhere. Minimal rates weren't acceptable. America needed a way to get this coal faster and more efficiently in order to keep their mass production running strong. So we developed two major mining techniques: surface and underground mining. We'll cover surface mining first. The land above a coal seam is removed and placed into a nearby valley. The miners then move in to mine the coal and shift off with trucks. Due to the recent rise of environmental programs, the mining operations have been forced to replace the blown-off topsoil. But in its new state, the thick soil for plants is gone. Only thin grass can be placed over the new land, and even then most of it is synthetic. There are other environmental repercussions as well, such as the possible death of animals in their habitats. But despite all this, mining corporations still use this technique. Why? Because it's cheaper. The hard truth is that once the land is blown off, it's less dangerous for miners to go in, so they are more likely to take the job. It also allows corporations to rely less on mechanical mining techniques and more on human labor, which can cut expenses. With all that out of the way, let's cover underground mining. This method of mining involves digging straight down into earth to locate a coal seam, then making an elevator shaft system so miners can travel down to collect the coal. It's then brought up to the surface where it is shipped away in the process. This method of mining keeps environmentalists happy. It involves less destruction of the land and only affects what's under the surface. Mining corporations are not happy. It requires a lot of materials in order to keep the shafts up so miners won't get caved in on, and that possibility in itself makes some miners scared to take the job, and they demand more health benefits. In fact, a group has been assembled known as the UMWA, or United Mine Workers of America, and have been standing up for their jobs, asking employers for better pay and health benefits, as well as more recognition for their work. Taking a bit of a sidetrack here, during the presidential race of 2012, Mitt Romney had workers take an unpaid day to have them come to a speech about helping keep coal mines open. This was followed by outrage from the public, claiming that it wasn't the president who was making them have a hard time with their jobs, it was the miners' employers. We're almost through the complete energy creation cycle. We know where our coal is, how much we can get, and how to get it. But where does it go from there? Well, it depends on the kind of coal and its carbon values. To understand what I'm talking about, we'll have to go through the basics. The four major kinds of coal, which are known as anthracite, bituminous, subbituminous, and lignite. Anthracite is the coal in the highest carbon content. It's the easiest to burn because of that, making it ideal for large-scale mass production. Bituminous is the most plentiful kind of coal in the U.S. It can have as high carbon content as anthracite, but it's not certain. This coal is also known as coking coal, which is used in the steel-making process, which we'll briefly look into later. Subbituminous, as you can tell by its name, has less carbon content than bituminous. Still, it has a use. Because of its lower carbon content, it can still be burned to generate a cleaner source of energy when possible. Lastly, lignite has the lowest carbon content among all coal types. This makes it ideal to provide residential power, an area of energy use which uses a smaller amount of energy. But I've bored you enough, so let's get into the juicy content. Throughout this whole project, I've been talking about coal being important for energy. But how in the world does it become energy to begin with? It's a simple process, but it requires many steps. First, the coal is mined and taken to power plants. There, it's burned in a boiler which produces steam. The steam flows through multiple tubes into a turbine which is spun by the steam. The turbine blades spin magnets that are close to wire coils in a generator. The wires then produce an electrical charge that runs through the wire, which is connected to homes, schools, and businesses. This is the simple steam engine. There are multiple other ways that coal generates power, but this is one of the basic methods. Now, while power generation is the main use of coal, there are other uses for it as well. For instance, as mentioned earlier, bituminous coal is also known as coking coal and is an important part of the steel-making process. In this process, the solid properties of the coal are removed by exposing the rock to extreme temperatures, leaving almost pure carbon, which is stored in coke batteries. The coke is then fed into a blast furnace with iron ore at a whopping 1,200 degrees Celsius. The heated iron has most, if not all, of its impurities removed from it, and the result is the molten metal liquid that is soon to be steel. But all this knowledge leads to a bigger question. Where does the coal start out? Well, the process coal goes through is actually very simple. Coal starts off as plants thousands of years ago. When they die, they sunk into swamps and kept from biodegrading entirely. The coal is then compressed by sediment and is heated. The more compression, the higher the carbon content. The reason we have such an issue with coal amounts is because of the amount of time it takes to produce more. So there we have it, the way America finds, mines, and utilizes coal. This is just scratching the surface, though. New uses and innovation in energy are being made every day. It's an ever-evolving industry, growing and changing in sync with the needs and wants of humankind. America wouldn't be where it is today without coal. We wouldn't have light bulbs. We would have candles. We wouldn't have mass production. We would have small, homemade businesses that produce slowly. Television, coffee makers, there are hundreds of things human life finds essential that we wouldn't have if we couldn't take the first step, making electricity on a larger scale. It would also affect knowledge in other ways as well. Science would be put to a halt without the aid of energy-powered equipment. Learning languages has never been easier with programs like Rosetta Stone and Google Translate. All it takes is to look around and see all the progress we've made thanks to the discovery of coal and energy.